The tensions between China and Taiwan have been simmering for over a century. As the years have gone by, it's been getting increasingly more likely to see a Chinese invasion into Taiwan, similar to how Russia invaded Ukraine's Crimea in 2014. In this video, we'll do a deep dive into the historical roots and evolution of the relationship between the two sides, and the very real possibility of invasion in the future. Let's get into it.
Chinese war games near Taiwan.
First, to truly understand the tensions between China and Taiwan, we need to go back to the late 19th century. In 1895, the First Sino-Japanese War broke out between the Qing dynasty of China and the Empire of Japan. The war ended disastrously for China, resulting in the Treaty of Shimonoseki, which forced China to cede Taiwan to Japan. This marked the beginning of Taiwan's colonization, and the island remained under Japanese control for 50 years. During this period, Japan heavily invested in Taiwan's infrastructure, agriculture, and industry, modernizing the island to serve its own imperial interests. However, this modernization came at a cost. While Taiwan prospered economically, the island's native population endured heavy repression. The Japanese authorities sought to assimilate the Taiwanese people, imposing the Japanese language, culture, and a rigid education system. Despite these efforts, a distinct Taiwanese identity began to take root during the colonial period, an identity that would later become a flashpoint in Taiwan's future relationship with China. The end of World War II in 1945 brought significant changes. Following Japan's defeat, Taiwan was returned to Chinese control under the Republic of China, ROC, then led by Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government. But this transition back to Chinese rule wasn't smooth. Taiwan had developed significantly under Japanese governance, and many Taiwanese viewed the Chinese nationalists with suspicion and resentment. While Taiwan was adjusting to life under the Republic of China, a much larger struggle was unfolding on the mainland. The Chinese Civil War, which began in the late 1920s between the Chinese Nationalist Party, KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, intensified after World War II. The nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek, and the communists under Mao Zedong battled for control of China. By 1949, the communists emerged victorious, and Mao declared the establishment of the People's Republic of China, PRC, on October 1st of that year. The defeated nationalists fled to Taiwan, where they re-established the ROC government. With the ROC now exiled on Taiwan and the PRC controlling the mainland, two rival Chinese governments claimed to be the legitimate rulers of China. This marked the official split between China and Taiwan. While Taiwan had returned to Chinese rule after Japan's defeat, it was now home to a government in exile that represented the remnants of Chiang Kai-shek's forces. For the next several decades, the PRC sought to reclaim Taiwan, viewing it as a rebellious province that needed to be brought back under mainland control. On the other hand, the ROC in Taiwan maintained that it was the legitimate government of all of China, refusing to recognize the PRC. This ideological divide set the stage for future conflicts and the ongoing struggle for recognition on the world stage. As the Cold War began, the geopolitical significance of Taiwan increased dramatically. Both the United States and the Soviet Union were expanding their spheres of influence, and Taiwan quickly became a vital ally for the United States in its strategy to contain communism. The US did not fully recognize the PRC as China's legitimate government for several decades, and instead supported Chiang Kai-shek's ROC, providing Taiwan with economic and military aid. This period saw heightened tensions in the Taiwan Strait. In 1954 and again in 1958, the First and Second Taiwan Strait crisis erupted when Chinese forces shelled Taiwanese-controlled islands. The US intervened diplomatically and militarily, sending warships to the region to deter further Chinese aggression. These crises demonstrated the fragility of peace between the PRC and the ROC, with Taiwan serving as a battleground for the ideological conflict between communism and democracy. Despite the tensions, major conflict was averted, largely due to US military might and nuclear deterrence. The US continued to bolster Taiwan's defenses, positioning the island as a critical anti-communist outpost in East Asia. While Taiwan remained diplomatically isolated during much of the Cold War, its economy began to soar. By the 1960s, Taiwan had emerged as one of Asia's 4 Asian tigers, along with South Korea, Hong Kong and Singapore. Taiwan's rapid industrialization, fueled by economic reforms and US financial aid, transformed the island into a high-tech powerhouse, with electronics and manufacturing driving its economy. As Taiwan's economy grew, so too did its domestic political landscape. Under the rule of Chiang Kai-shek and later his son, Chiang Ching-kuo, Taiwan remained an authoritarian state. However, starting in the 1980s, a democratization movement gained momentum. In 1987, martial law, which had been in place for almost 40 years, was lifted, and Taiwan transitioned towards democracy. By the 1990s, Taiwan had fully embraced democratic reforms, holding its first direct presidential election in 1996. This period saw the rise of Taiwanese nationalism. As democracy flourished, more and more Taiwanese citizens began to identify as Taiwanese rather than Chinese. This growing national identity caused tensions with Beijing, which viewed any notion of Taiwanese independence as a direct challenge to the One China policy. Beijing insisted that Taiwan remained a part of China and vowed to prevent any attempt at formal independence. As Taiwan flourished economically and politically, the Chinese government became more assertive in its efforts to bring the island back under its control. The One China policy became a central tenet of China's foreign policy. According to this policy, there is only one China, and Taiwan is an inseparable part of it. China made it clear that any move by Taiwan towards independence would be considered a hostile act and could result in military action. In the international arena, China used its growing economic and political influence to pressure other countries into adhering to the One China policy. Nations that wanted to establish diplomatic relations with China had to sever official ties with Taiwan. Over time, Taiwan's international recognition dwindled and the island became increasingly isolated. Despite this, Taiwan continued to develop strong unofficial relations with many countries, particularly the United States. However, the lack of formal diplomatic recognition remains a significant obstacle for Taiwan on the global stage. In recent years, tension between China and Taiwan have reached new heights. China's military, the People's Liberation Army, PLA, has grown significantly in both size and capability, conducting increasingly aggressive military exercises near Taiwan. These drills often include live-fire exercises, naval blockades, and simulations of amphibious assaults, signaling China's preparedness to use force if necessary. Meanwhile, Taiwan has bolstered its defenses, heavily relying on military aid and arms purchases from the United States. Taiwan's defense strategy centers on asymmetric warfare, focusing on technologies and tactics designed to repel a potential Chinese invasion. Taiwan's geographic features, including its mountainous terrain and fortified coastlines, make it a difficult target for an amphibious assault. The US has continued to maintain its policy of strategic ambiguity towards Taiwan, neither explicitly committing to defend the island in the event of an attack, nor ruling out the possibility of military intervention. This policy is designed to deter both China from invading and Taiwan from declaring independence. But as China's military power grows, the balance becomes more precarious. The possibility of war between China and Taiwan is a question on the minds of many experts and global leaders. Several factors make the risk of conflict increasingly real. China's growing military strength and assertiveness in the Taiwan Strait, coupled with its rising nationalist rhetoric, indicate that Beijing may not wait indefinitely for peaceful reunification. At the same time, Taiwan's continued push for international recognition and its deepening ties with the US have aggravated Beijing. However, there are also significant barriers to war. An invasion of Taiwan would be a massive military undertaking for China, and the island's defensive capabilities would make such an operation difficult and costly. Moreover, the international community, particularly the United States and its allies, would likely respond to any aggressive action by China, potentially leading to a broader conflict in the region. While many believe that war is not imminent, the situation remains fragile. A miscalculation or accidental incident in the Taiwan Strait could quickly escalate into a full-blown conflict. As the world watches the ongoing tensions between China and Taiwan, one thing is certain: the stakes are incredibly high. Whether the future brings peaceful reunification, a prolonged stalemate, or outright war will depend on the decisions made by leaders in Beijing, Taipei, Washington, and beyond. The choices made in the coming years will shape not only the fate of Taiwan, but the balance of power in the entire Asia-Pacific region and the global order itself. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, stay aware. Until next time.